And I'm going to mute myself and not say anything unless you need me for anything specific. So
perfect. Thanks, Irene.
I am here and
awesome. So thank you everybody for joining us tonight. We are so grateful to have the Natural Factors team and Dr. Kate with us to talk about menopause. So just a couple of housekeeping items before we start. If you do have questions, we just ask that you either put them in the chat window or the Q&A window, and we'll get to them towards the end. We'll have about 10-15 minutes for questions at the end. And this session is also recorded, so if you have to duck out for any reason, we'll send a follow-up and a nice summary that Natural Factors has included as well. We'll send that out to an email to everybody who registered. So without further ado, I'll pass it off to Dr. Kate.
Great, thanks, Michelle. Let me just share my screen. I guess asking me all kinds of things that I'm not used to answering. Who can share?
Oh, you should. Let me just make sure. Can you share your screen?
When I click on share screen, oh, there we go. Oh, here we go. Great.
I think Zoom made some changes.
Yes, I saw an option I'd not seen before. There we go.
Perfect.
So this is relevant if you've still got some snow where you are. Okay, well, thanks, Michelle. Okay, I think we've got the technical end of it worked out, and we will get started to talk about a subject that is always timely and important, and that is optimizing our hormones during menopause. Menopause is a normal, natural transition, and we shouldn't have to suffer quite so much as some of us do during this transition. So my goal is to share with you some useful, practical information, a bit of the know-how and understanding about hormones in general and how they work. You need enough of that understanding to understand the rationale by behind different changes and suggestions that I'll make, and that you can come away with some practical, useful info to feel better sooner through changing hormone times. So a few words about myself. I am naturopathic Dr. Kate Rhéaume. I am the author of this book, Vitamin K2 and the Calcium Paradox, How a Little Known Vitamin Could Save Your Life. And I am in addition to being an author, I'm a graduate and former faculty member of the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine. I am a busy working mom, among many other things, an educator with Factors Group, which is what brings me here tonight. And as Michelle mentioned, feel free to type questions into the chat area as we go along. There will also be a handout at the end that you can download that will keep track of notes and the things I've been saying. And I do believe that the recording will be sent out as well after the presentation. So what are we going to cover over the next, let's say, 40 to 45 minutes or so, more or less? And then with time for questions afterwards, we'll look at common health conditions and symptoms that can affect us in the perimenopause and early menopause phase, as well as which nutrients, herbs, and lifestyle changes and tips and support and habits can be used to support hormone-related symptoms, and how we can be proactive in preventing hormone imbalances and reestablishing balance for our hormones. And this will, this will apply slightly differently depending on where you are in the stages, pre-peri, or slightly post-menopause, but it will all be relevant to this phase of life. So let's do just a brief overview, as brief as we can, of hormones. Hormones are very complex. Now, I don't mean to overwhelm anyone with this diagram. There will not be a test on this, and I don't want to make anyone's eyes glaze over, but this does give you an idea about how complex hormones are and their interactions. Very close interactions. Really, you can think of them as different instruments in an orchestra or a symphony, and they do need to play in conjunction with one another in order for things to work well. And so just some very broad strokes, and understanding some key points here will help you understand or lay the foundation for things I will share later. Is, first of all, as you can see, most of the hormones that we're talking about here, and by the way, these are just considered to be, for the most part, reproductive and some stress hormones. There's all kinds of other hormones, things like insulin and thyroid hormones that are not covered on here. But these hormones start with cholesterol. So, as an aside, cholesterol is not the enemy. We need it in our body for a number of reasons, including making hormones. And then very early on in this chain of hormone production, we have progesterone. Progesterone is especially important for women in perimenopause, and when progesterone starts to lower, that can trigger some of the early unpleasant symptoms we can experience in the perimenopause or menopausal change. And progesterone actually feeds down to a loop of hormones that results in cortisol. And what that means is if we're under a lot of stress and our body needs to make a lot of cortisol, of course, the famous stress hormone, that can end up stealing our progesterone. And so getting our stress levels under control can be a really important foundation for healthy hormones of all kinds, because we're not putting too much of our resources into making stress hormones at the expense of other important hormones that are really important for well-being. And then over off as a side shoot of the progesterone, there are the estrogen testosterone, which were often considered the real, male-female hormones, but we each have them both. Testosterone is important for libido, for example, and at certain aspects of energy and maintaining muscle mass. And when it comes to estrogen, we think of in menopause as estrogen lowering, but in fact, there's more than one type of estrogen. And regardless of where you are, pre, post menopause, going through a transition, there are more than one types of estrogen, and there are good and bad estrogens. I will explain a little bit more about that later, but estrogen isn't quite so simple. And we want to be able to shift the balance of any estrogen that we do have, whether, regardless of where that is, towards the good one. So these are just some of the very broad strokes of some of the things that I'll be talking about with relation to hormones. So what are hormones? Hormones are powerful chemical messengers that keep us happy, focused, and peaceful. They are important for every aspect of our well-being, including metabolism, sexual behavior, blood sugar balance, stress, fertility, mood, growth, sleep. I could keep going. Hormones are really important throughout life. So what can we do to maintain healthy hormones? Just in terms of foundational aspects of hormone health, exercise I can't say enough about it. If it came in a pill, it would be the most prescribed medicine. It does a lot of important things for balancing our hormones, balancing our stress levels. That's really important. Think of it as a prescription, not just an option, for example. Being completely sedentary, so not active at all, creates inflammation in the body. In fact, it's counterintuitive that doing nothing actually causes inflammation, but that's exactly how it works. And that will throw off hormones as well as other aspects of health. Sleep is important. Now, I know this one's tricky because many people don't necessarily sleep well during menopause, pre-post, around, or otherwise. And we could do a whole evening or a whole webinar on sleep, and I often do. But just for simplicity's sake, and so we can focus on other things, getting an adequate quality and quantity of sleep is important. You're looking at typically that 7 to 9 hours, or the 8-hour mark of good quality sleep per night. Healthy eating. We need all kinds of nutrients to produce hormones properly. So healthy fats are important. Protein-rich foods, the amino acids play a role in hormone production and maintaining our muscle mass. Fresh whole fruits and vegetables, which contain fiber and lots of phytonutrients, which are important for overall health and especially hormone health. I'll mention some specific foods later on. And just in general, a nutrient-dense, nutritious diet. And reducing stress is key, and particularly changing our perception. This may seem, Pollyanna or maybe airy-fairy, but in fact, there's a lot of really important research that shows that, first of all, we respond to stress by producing inflammatory compounds, just the way we do to any other type of irritant or injury. And perception, so among people who are equally and highly stressed, those who perceive their stress as a challenge do much better, live longer, have better markers of health than those who perceive their stress as a threat. So literally what we think can change our health down to the cellular level. And perception has been shown to be important. I love this quote: being negative only makes a journey more difficult. You may be given a cactus, but you don't have to sit on it. That's the idea. Okay, so I want to just make two comments about certain nutrients that are really important for hormone health, foundational, and are easily overlooked or we can easily miss out on these in our diet. The first one is omega-3 essential fatty acids. These are the type of healthy fats that you would find in deep cold water fish or grass-fed animal foods. You can find certain types in some plant foods like flax and hemp. Those forms are short chain forms that the body has to convert into the long chain that you would normally find in fish, for example. And a good quality omega-3 supplement, again, hard to get omega-3s in the diet, and they really are a foundation of hormone health. So I have an example here. There's lots on the market. Quality varies quite a bit, quality as well as potency, but here's an example, the Women's Complete RX Omega-3. It provides the long chain omega-3s, EPA and DHA, as well as others that are particularly helpful for women's hormone health, like evening primrose oil and flaxseed oil. So that is an example of an important nutrient for hormone health. And then a deficiency of any individual nutrient can throw off our hormone balance or our overall well-being as well. That can cause problems down the road because our body will direct nutrients in short supply to immediate needs at the expense of long-term needs. And so it's hard to beat a good quality multivitamin, just to bridge the gap between what would be an ideal diet and our everyday realistic diet. And if you specifically want to look for one for women 50 plus, and that specifically means referring to women who are no longer have a menstrual cycle, postmenopausal, and there are a few important and meaningful differences with these types of formulas. So Whole Earth and Sea Pure Food Women's 50 plus is an example. One of the things you'll find in a 50 plus multivitamin, and the reason why you shouldn't take one for, say, women under 50, is that these formulas are iron free. If you are not losing iron on a monthly basis, you don't need an iron supplement, and you shouldn't take an iron supplement. And so this is, unless you have blood tests to show that you are low in iron, that's a different story, but the Women's 50 Plus is iron free. It has vitamin K2 for bone and heart health, which becomes more important after menopause, calcium as well. And this is, it's something to look for in terms of general foundational nutritional support. Okay, so let us talk about, I mentioned stress right off the bat and how stress can very directly disrupt our hormones by shunting too much of our hormonal pathways towards the production of cortisol. So that happens because when our brain perceives a stress, then our brain sends a message. When we're under stress, when we hear bad news or we're surviving a pandemic, for example, our brain will send a message to our adrenal glands. These are these little hat-shaped organs that sit on top of the kidneys. There's a zoom in of the adrenal glands right there. They produce things like adrenaline, as the name implies, as well as cortisol. And in small amounts, those hormones are good things. And we do need cortisol. We think of it as a stress hormone, but we produce cortisol every day. It should be produced normally in a daily rhythm where it goes up in the morning so we can get up and get going. And then it gradually decreases as the day goes on so we can unwind and go to sleep. But if we have too much cortisol because we're under too high stress for too long, excess cortisol will cause us to gain weight, especially around the middle, abdominal fat, for a number of reasons, including the fact it fuels the desire for carbs, fatty foods, cravings. It decreases our feel-good hormones like serotonin, increases anxiety, lowers blood sugar, increases insulin, lowers testosterone, which can cause muscle loss in both men and women. It inhibits melatonin production, impacting sleep. I already mentioned it decreases progesterone, which affects mental and physical well-being. And so the point with cortisol is that we don't want it to be too high or too low. We want a normal, natural daily rhythm. And if that gets thrown off, then all kinds of other hormones will get thrown off. And sometimes restoring that, addressing the stress aspect of the equation, is the single most important thing we can do first before looking at any other hormones. And here is what can happen. So this is somebody who's had cortisol testing using saliva. You spit into a tube about 4 times over the course of a day. A normal cortisol rhythm would be this green shaded area here. As I mentioned, it goes up in the morning, peaks around 7:38 in the morning typically, and then gradually decreases as the day goes on, so you can unwind at nighttime. This individual, the blue line here, is represented by a 57-year-old female who had poor sleep and her cortisol was flatlined. So she was beyond stressed into the exhaustion phase where she wasn't even really making much cortisol. So her get up and go, got up and went. She felt exhausted when she woke up in the morning, needs several cups of coffee to get started, and then just felt kind of flat and drained and exhausted throughout the day. So that can happen too. You can get to that end stage of exhaustion where instead of too much cortisol, you really have flatlined and have too little. So that is also a condition that we sometimes refer to as adrenal fatigue. So when our adrenal glands have been under stress for extended periods of long periods of time, and including the kind of year we've just been through, or things like losing a job, or even maybe changing to a new job, or getting promotion, or moving, or a marriage, or a divorce, or all kinds of things can deplete us. And our adrenal glands then stop producing the hormones in the right amounts at the right time of day, leaving us feeling, well, there's all kinds of things that you can experience. Fatigue, of course, especially in the morning, anxiety, irritability, low mood, sleep disturbances, craving salt, sugar, coffee, other stimulants, feeling overwhelmed, can't cope, frazzled, fried nerves, irritable, frequent lightheadedness on standing, waking up unrefreshed. There's all kinds of things that come with this stress picture. So is this the solution to our tired adrenal glands? No, but many people will then reach to and rely on excess coffee, strong, black teas, energy drinks. And there's nothing wrong with having a cup or maybe even 2 of coffee in the morning. It can be a nice morning ritual. Fresh brewed coffee contains antioxidants. It's good for your brain and blood sugar. But if you can't live without it, if you need several cups throughout the morning to get going, you need more in the afternoon to keep going, that's a sign that you are reliant on stimulants for energy that you don't have. And so this is where we're looking at adrenal fatigue. So how do we restore the adrenals? Well, a lot of it is the same basic information that I shared about foundation of hormone health. So healthy, nutritious diet, getting adequate sleep, very important, exercise, but not too much. If you're already burnt out, that's not the time to start training for a marathon. A good rule of thumb is that exercise should invigorate you and give you energy. So if you exercise at any time of the day and feel well and feel energized by exercise for the rest of the day, that's a good sign. But if you feel more tired afterwards, exhausted for the rest of the day, or you run out of energy in the end of the day, then you may be exercising more than your adrenal glands can handle at the moment. So do something, but maybe scale back or keep it more gentle, for example. Slowing down, just relaxing, taking time to enjoy pleasurable activities, rest and relaxation, and specific nutrients. So our adrenal glands need specific nutrients to continue to make those stress hormones appropriately at the right time of day. Things like B vitamins are really important for energy in general, but the stress hormone production, B5 in particular, but all of the Bs. Sometimes you'll see Bs in combos called stress, stress B, stress tab, stress complex, and that's because it does help with our stress response. Vitamin C as well is required for production of stress hormones, and we can become depleted in that. Magnesium. This is the anti-stress mineral. We absolutely deplete more magnesium. You use it up under stress. Tough to come by in the diet, and it helps to relax muscles and lower blood pressure. Quite nice to take at bedtime, and it's an anti-stress mineral for sure. And then finally, what I'm going to focus on, because I feel like not as many people know or understand, and the information about this isn't as readily available, is specific botanical medicines. So specific plant-based medicines that will help the adrenal gland do their job properly, producing appropriate amounts of hormones at the right times of day. So as an example, here is Adrenasense by Women's Sense. And this is a combination of what are called adaptogen herbs. So these are herbs that help you adapt to or cope with stress. This combination contains rhodiola, which helps with physical and emotional well-being, helps to lift your mood a little bit. Suma, which is sometimes called Siberian ginseng, Suma is called Brazilian ginseng sometimes. The formula also contains Siberian ginseng. These are not true ginsengs. They will not elevate your blood pressure. They use that term. Siberian ginseng or Eleutherococcus has been used extensively for people under stress, athletes, students. Ashwagandha as well, a lot of research around ashwagandha as a healthy aging herb, anti-stress herb. It's probably one of the most, if not the most single best known and most widely utilized anti-stress herbs. So this kind of combination, ideally is taken 1 capsule twice daily with food. So typically breakfast and lunch, like earlier in the day. You don't want to take this later in the day. It doesn't contain stimulants, but rhodiola at bedtime can give you funny dreams. And anyway, you want to sort of lift things up earlier in the day so you can unwind later on. This is designed to increase energy and well-being, combat fatigue, improve mental and physical performance after periods of mental or physical exhaustion, stress, burnout. Helps to support normal, healthy cortisol levels and adrenal function. And this is a most important, I know a lot of women who are able to manage what we think of as menopausal symptoms and things like hot flashes just by managing their stress, because it's the spikes in the cortisol and adrenaline that were then setting off hot flashes. And so I feel like dealing with the stress component of our hormones helps to bring everything else in alignment. So this is why I, tend to recommend this and go here first, because we're, as in general, pretty stressed out, especially lately in the last year. So, people will feel difference taking this sometimes even after a few days, and that's nice. But remember, we didn't get depleted overnight, didn't get burnt out overnight. And so taking this on a daily basis for a few weeks or more, you'll gradually feel more and more resilient in the face of stress. And sometimes that in itself can really take out a lot of the other symptoms that we associate with menopause are in fact due to adrenal fatigue. And there's just a few symptoms that are truly due to what you could say menopause, and the rest is often due to adrenal imbalance or adrenal fatigue. So we'll talk about some of those other symptoms. Okay, so the true menopause symptoms are related to the imbalance between estrogen and progesterone and the types of estrogen that we find, and that can fluctuate and vary for, 2 to 5 to even 10-year period. And so we're talking about things now when we talk about true menopause symptoms: hot flashes and night sweats, vaginal dryness, irregular periods, insomnia, anxiety and depression, brain fog, low libido, bladder incontinence, and or overactive bladder. And like I said, I like establishing, and even for some people, getting the stress component under control will help with these. But there are other herbs, again, botanical plant-based medicines, that will deal with, if you have sort of the full menopausal picture, what I call the work, so all of those symptoms that I just mentioned, then there are a number of herbs that work well in combination. Black cohosh is one that probably has the most extensive history of use and research for menopausal herbs, as well as chasteberry, or otherwise called vitex. Hesperidin, dong quai, all of these together help to ease the transition through menopause and deal with this picture, the menopausal picture symptoms of hot flashes, night sweats, irritability, mood swings, brain fog, even can address vaginal dryness, although topical Estrogen creams also do a very good job of dealing with that. And this is something that is designed to be taken 2 caps at breakfast, 2 caps daily at bedtime. If you find you're more exclusively hot flashes or night sweats, you can, one or the other. You can take an extra capsule, like shift one of the capsules to either night or morning accordingly. But typically 2 at breakfast, 2 at bedtime. And again, you want to be taking this for, I would say, at least a week or 2 to get the full benefits of it. And so this is designed for people who have, as I said, I call the works, all of those symptoms. If, on the other hand, you just have either hot flashes or night sweats, you don't have any of the other concerns, and there is one very simple, safe, not this is safe, but just very simple treatment that has been used for centuries and very commonly used in Europe today as a medicine, which is sage leaf. So sage leaf aids in cooling the body and helps to decrease excess perspiration and quickly relieve night sweats and hot flashes. And when the night sweats or the hot flashes are really the only symptom, you otherwise feel quite well, but you struggle with the sweats or the flashes, then sage is a really nice option to consider. Sage can also be taken by men who perspire excessively. However, men who experience hot flashes or specifically night sweats should absolutely see their doctor and not delay, because that is considered to be quite an unusual symptom that merits further investigation in men who are experiencing night sweats. Should definitely see their doctor. But if once given the all clear, men can also take sage for excess perspiration. So just simple sage leaf used for a long history of traditional use as well as modern research to support its effect on hot flushes, night sweats, cooling the body. Some indications suggest that it may improve mood and cognition, but studies are still ongoing on that. But particularly when it comes to hot flashes and night sweats, it's like a simple and usually quite fast-acting remedy for that most people aren't aware of. So this would be 2 capsules twice daily. It would be a typical dose for that. So other lifestyle tips to ease symptoms. Many people find that their hot flashes in particular may be triggered by specific foods. And so identifying what those might be and eliminating them temporarily, things like coffee, chocolate are common culprits, alcohol, spices, dairy, aged cheeses can be a trigger. Red wine is notorious for that, peanuts. For some people, red meat, it depends. And so if you can try to identify what those are. Exercise, super important, as I've mentioned already a few times, for cognition, muscle strength, preventing falls and fractures, challenging our brain, that the brain fog does alleviate over time, does get better, memory also improves. And making sure you're getting adequate hydration. Again, I've already mentioned stress management. And there are certain foods that have been shown to help deal with menopausal symptoms because of their phytoestrogen content. So flax seeds, legumes, things like fresh green peas, as well as other legumes like lentils, chickpeas, alfalfa. Those are all have been shown to be helpful to include in the diet. Specifically, one study done in the UK showing that women who consume more fresh legumes, which I can't think of many other fresh legumes that we consume commonly other than green peas, were shown to have fewer hot flashes, fewer night sweats, and improved transition through the menopause. Okay, so I want to touch on then a subject before we wrap up and have time for questions, because I see lots of them signals coming through the chat, is about collagen loss. And I mentioned this, although it doesn't pertain directly to what we would consider to be menopausal symptoms, it is something that accelerates at menopause. And so, collagen is a main structural protein that we have throughout our body. It's in our skin, it's in our joints, it's in our bones, tendons, arteries, ligaments, you name it. Up to 35% of all the protein in our body is collagen. And it's strong and it's flexible and it turns over. So it's constantly being broken down and needs to be replaced and replenished. We do that very well when we're younger. Our collagen production system starts to slow down even as early as our 20s. We don't notice this until maybe the mid-30s when the fine lines start to kick in, because the amount of collagen that's being broken down is exceeding the body's capacity to build it up. And so we have a net loss, which shows superficially as fine lines, which progress into thicker or deeper lines or wrinkles. The average woman's skin decreases by thickness 7% every 10 years. And after menopause, I said things accelerate. From the 5 years after menopause, there's a period where there's about a 30% loss of skin collagen. Now, nobody's crazy about the appearance aspect of things, but this is more than skin deep, because studies have shown that the extent to which we're losing collagen on the outside is reflective to the extent it's happening on the inside. And specifically, you can predict a woman's bone density by measuring external facial wrinkles, because our bones are made up of collagen. The average woman loses about 8 to 9% of bone mineral density every year. This is an important and overlooked aspect of bone health. If the bones are shrinking, the literal matrix of the bones are shrinking, you can throw all kinds of calcium, vitamin D, even vitamin K2 at it. If there's nowhere for the minerals to go, it's difficult to maintain bone health. So there's a big buzz around collagen right now, because we now finally have effective ways to replace our collagen level. Oh, this is the study about the link between having more facial wrinkling being associated with lower bone density. And again, the connection there is collagen loss that happens on the outside and the inside. So what can we do to get our collagen back? Well, there's 2 clinically proven ways to do it. You can do one or the other. Some people do both, but you don't have to. Some that you may be more familiar with others. You've probably heard of collagen peptides. So I have an example here on the left, total body collagen. This is just a few of the members of this line of products. Or equally effective is Biosil. Biosil is something called choline stabilized orthosilicic acid, which is why we just call it Biosil, much easier to say. And so I'll explain a little bit how these work. Like I said, people do take these together, but typically they are complete and effective, one or the other. Collagen peptides, like you see in the total body collagen here, are hydrolyzed collagen protein fragments that you get from an animal source, because collagen is only found in animals. So the ones I show here are bovine. The total body collagen also has a marine collagen from fish, skin, and skeletons. And those little peptides, you take them typically in a powdered form, you absorb them, and then that sends a message to your own collagen producing cells to step up production and incorporate the amino acids from those peptides, and has been shown to reduce the appearance of fine lines within 28 days, helpful for bone density as well as joint health, reduce the appearance of cellulite even, because that helps to smooth out the skin when it's more replete in collagen. One very important thing to look for in collagen peptide supplements, which you will find in the total body collagen, is the addition of the amino acid tryptophan, which is normally and naturally missing from collagen supplements. And if you aren't taking tryptophan with your collagen supplement, you can become depleted in tryptophan, which can affect serotonin levels, which can affect sleep and mood. So this is why I'm showing the example of total body collagen, because it has that amino acid added back in there, in addition to other ingredients which help with skin, hair, nails, and joints. Now, as I mentioned, the collagen peptides are from animal source. That's the only way you can get collagen in nature. However, Biosil, for people who are looking either for a vegetarian alternative, vegan, vegetarian, or they don't want to take a drink, they just want to take a couple capsules or a few drops. Biosil is a specialized form of the mineral silica, and that is absorbable in a way that is unique. Because it's bound to choline, it gets right into your cells in a way that other forms don't. And so the BioCell has been clinically proven also, and a lot of very impressive research behind this, extensive research, to improve the formation, helps the formation of your own collagen and elastin, to help improve the look and feel and health of skin, hair, nails, and bone density. And so again, this is something that people will take, notice a difference. You only see the differences on the outside, but the clinical work supports its benefits for bone health on the inside. So those are two options for collagen, which again, I bring up because it's a hot topic. There's a lot of misinformation around it, and it's something that changes very quickly at menopause. Okay, other thing I wanted to mention, I showed a number of different brands and labels throughout the past half hour or so. One of the things they all have in common is this Ashura symbol. Ashura is Canada's only independent, not-for-profit natural health supplement and food product verification organization. So when people say, how do I know I'm getting a good natural health product? This little symbol on your label, which is found on a wide variety of brands and labels sold exclusively at health food stores, that is the guarantee you're getting exactly what it says on the label and nothing else. There is testing for GMOs to make sure the product is free of GMOs, but also mass spec testing, which is contaminants testing above and beyond the even strict Canadian guidelines. And for certain products, this is especially important. Collagen is one of them. Fish oils are another one. So this is, for people who ask, like, how can I trust what I'm getting? This Ashura symbol will give you that assurance, and you can check out their website, ashura.ca, if you are into like keener details of testing and whatnot. Also, I mentioned several products from the Women's Sense line. Women's Sense partners with the Canadian Women's Foundation. This is an organization that supports programs for women and girls all across Canada to help end violence, provide safe havens, teach about healthy relationships, support life-changing programs to help end sex trafficking of Canadian girls. And a portion of the proceeds of every product from the Women's Sense products, the Women's Sense line, goes to the Canadian Women's Foundation. Okay, I think that brings us up to the about 40 minutes or so, and you should have the handout that you can download at this point, and we have lots of time for questions. So let me go to
Dr. Kate, we do have a couple in the chat window.
the chat. Oh, okay. Should I start in the chat or the Q&A?
It doesn't matter, whichever one you want to start with, and then if you want to start in the Q&A, go ahead, and then I will lead you to the panelist or into the chat window after that. Okay, great. I'm in the Q&A now, so we'll start here. First one from Tracy. My women's 50 plus has vitamin K1 90 micrograms. Is this as good as K2? That's a great question. Unfortunately, Tracy, it's not. Vitamin K1 and K2 are quite different. K1 is really easy to get from your diet, and the body recycles it, so you never really have to worry about taking it in a supplement, for example, and it does different things than vitamin K2, so good idea for bone health and heart health to make sure you're getting a source of vitamin K2 in your diet, or a supplement that contains K2 specifically, not just the K1. Next question from Nadine. How does Adrenasense compare to a product called Serenogen? Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with the product. I haven't heard that name before, so I can't say how they compare. Sorry, Nadine. Let me see here. Oh, Nadine asked, curious about the difference between Menosense and Estrosense. Okay, this is a good question. Menosense is a combination of botanical medicines designed to relieve menopausal symptoms, like I mentioned, hot flashes, night sweats, vaginal dryness, all of these kinds of things. Whereas Estrosense is a product designed to, in fact, help the liver process and metabolize
variety of toxins, including xenoestrogens, and help to shift the balance of estrogens from the unhealthy to the healthy protective types. That's the difference between those two products. Next, I have surgical menopause, currently on estrogen path. Can I take all the Adrenal? So surgical menopause and on estrogen patch, yes, no problem taking any of these products. However, you shouldn't need to take the Menosense if you're on an estrogen patch. You typically shouldn't be experiencing those symptoms. So if you're on an estrogen patch and experiencing menopausal symptoms, it'd be worthwhile checking in with your provider as to whether your levels are adequate, whether you need progesterone as well. Something might need to be adjusted with the hormones. Feel as I am perimenopause and wonder if it's safe to take estrogen, perimenopause relief, and weight. I'm sorry, I don't know. I'm not, if this is estrogen perimenopause relief, if that's a specific product, I'm not familiar with it. So I can't speak to that particular question. Next one is, I have severe eczema. Would total body collagen or Biosil be better for me? So it depends what's going on with the eczema, but typically I would probably turn to the total body collagen, at least try it for that reason, because it also contains hyaluronic acid, which could be quite soothing and hydrating to the skin. I would tend to go in that direction for eczema. Now, the product is not designed necessarily to treat eczema, but if you're going to try a collagen product for that reason, then I would pick the total body collagen for that. Tracy asks, how much vitamin K2 should we take? That's a good question. For general health maintenance, around the 100 to 120 microgram mark will be plenty to cover your needs. For women who have been shown to have low bone density, the studies are using roughly almost double that, about 180 micrograms. And then for people who've been shown to have arterial calcification, studies use about, again, double that amount. But for general health maintenance, around 100 to 120 micrograms per day. What's a great K2 supplement? Natural factors, vitamin K on its own, or K and D. That's the one that is, it's very effective and economical, and that's typically what I take and my family takes. What are my thoughts on bioidentical hormones? Bioidentical hormones can be very helpful in the hands of the right person who knows about prescribing them. They're often topical, which means they are absorbed directly into the skin and not as heavily processed by the liver, which there's benefits to that. I am a fan of the bioidentical hormones. Jody asks, I can't take K2. I tried it and gave me heart palpitations. So Jody, that is, you are one of the very rare people, but this is an established and rare, you're the first person to comment about this in a forum like this, but it's not clear whether that is due to low magnesium or a genetic factor. But very rarely, I'll get maybe 1 or 2 emails per year about this. People will take K2 and experience this symptom. We don't quite exactly know what that is due to. I'm sorry that you're one of those people. You can try it again with some magnesium or just forego it. If my adrenals are depleted and exhausted, does Adrenasense bring them back? Yes, so Adrenasense is designed to help bring them back. Now remember, that's part of, I mentioned a whole program about exercising, resting, relaxing, but it's hard to substitute the benefits we get from a good adaptogen combination like Adrenasense, the restorative effect that can have on our adrenal glands. Can you speak about thyroid? In my case, no thyroid or using Synthroid. Would that affect or be impacted by hormone changes? So absolutely. So yes, thyroid and the rest of these hormones are interconnected. There's no doubt about that. I didn't focus on that tonight because that can get very complicated. Not everybody online necessarily has low thyroid, but it is very common. And there is a connection, and many people who have low thyroid, or even in some cases no thyroid, they're taking Synthroid, but they may still have thyroid symptoms. And again, the first step is dealing with the adrenal glands, because the adrenal glands are lagging, the thyroid will lag. And by picking up and supporting the adrenal glands, sometimes they will then help the thyroid for overall metabolism. That's usually step one. After that, it's worthwhile working with a practitioner who understands that, even though the blood levels may look okay, functionally, your thyroid may not be working well, and go from there, because there is a connection between these. Nadine, thoughts on taking bioidentical testosterone? So again, it's one of testosterone can be helpful and beneficial for both women and men in terms of energy production, sex drive, as well as maintaining muscle mass. So it has its place for hormone replacement. What can I do about weight gain due to menopause? So it depends on how much weight. It is very common to gain a little bit of weight around the abdomen at menopause. I suspect that this is a reservoir for estrogen that helps buffer these transitions in our estrogen levels. But I'm talking like, 5 pounds maybe. If you're gaining more than that, if you're gaining a lot of weight around the middle especially, then you want to, obviously modify your diet, likely reducing carbohydrate intake, obviously exercising, and all of the steps I mentioned in terms of reestablishing hormone health to get your metabolism back on track. Will CBD help with the symptoms? I don't know. I am not an expert in CBD, and I don't know about its use in menopausal symptoms, so I can't comment on that. When I take flax oil daily and add flax to my smoothies, my rosacea flusses even more. Why? Oh, that's interesting. So you may have a sensitivity to flax. That is my best guess on that one. When I take animal collagen, ovarian cysts rupture and can bleed vaginally for 26 days. I have not heard of this before when I'm stressed. So I would then say, don't take collagen if you've had a bad reaction to it. But that bleeding, prolonged bleeding, is often a sign of low progesterone. And so you do need to check in with your naturopathic doctor or another functional medicine doctor who understands hormones, but extensive bleeding for prolonged periods often means low progesterone. Isn't diatomaceous earth natural silica? It probably has some of that mineral in it, but I don't think you're supposed to eat that. As well as what's unique about BioSil is the silica in it is bound to choline, which allows it to be absorbed into the cells, which is something that we don't find with other types of silica. I was told by a cousin to steer clear of estrogen because her breast cancer was estrogen driven. Should I leave it alone? I'm still in perimenopause. So you'd have to speak to a practitioner about your specific health history as to whether, estrogen supplements or replacements. I can't comment on whether any individual should or shouldn't be taking them. Okay, I've tried K2. Adverse effects, felt like I was having a stroke. I'm not sure. I've not heard that before. I'm not sure what that reaction was. Sorry. Does having an IUD affect perimenopause, or does it affect us? So with an IUD, many of them are contain progesterone, and so it's worthwhile checking to see whether the balance of the hormones. It's rare to be higher on the end of progesterone, but it can happen, and that can lead people to feel unwell. So that's something worth checking. Does it matter what type of magnesium to take? This is a good question. We've got lots of different types of magnesium. It can be a little bit difficult to choose. Usually it boils down to one of two supplements, magnesium citrate and magnesium bisglycinate. I tend to go for magnesium citrate for the most part because it's inexpensive and effective. And that's that's quite predictable in its actions. For some people, they find magnesium citrate is hard on their digestion, so they prefer magnesium bisglycinate. It's easier on digestion, and so that's another good option for magnesium. What is good to take for hair loss? That's a very common question and very challenging to answer because there are so many things that contribute to hair loss. Low iron, low thyroid, a variety of other hormones being in fluctuation, including estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. So that's a difficult question to answer. I can say that Biosil has been shown to improve hair thickness and quality by about 13%, as well as, nails and skin. And so that is something to consider, Biosil for hair quality, but there's lots of factors that go into hair. Are there any contraindications for those with Hashimoto's disease? So no, none of the products that I mentioned here. Oh, what's the difference between perimenopause and menopause? I hear different thoughts on this. So you know what, we use the terms interchangeably. Technically, perimenopause is the period of 2 to 5, but it's, like I said, it could be up to 10 years where you're having some signs and symptoms that maybe the cycles are becoming irregular, but you still do have a cycle, but they're fluctuating. Sometimes they come, sometimes they don't. That's technically perimenopause. Menopause, by definition, is when you have not had a menstrual cycle for, there's a definition, over 6 months. I think is it over 6 months or over a year, but the menstrual cycle has completely stopped. Then you are technically in menopause. So that is the difference between those terms, but we often use them loosely and interchangeably.
So Dr. Kate, we have 2 more questions in the Q&A, so we'll take those. And then we've got about 10 more minutes. So we'll go into the chat window just to see if there's any questions in there.
Okay, thanks. This one, my doctor prescribed me compounded cream with only progesterone in it. Is this really going to help me with hot flashes or night sweats? The pharmacist raised his eyebrows. I'm not. It might not. So progesterone cream can really make a difference. People can feel really good on it, but it's not the first thing for hot flashes and night sweats on their own. I wouldn't necessarily expect that effect. So you'd have to try it and see. Just diagnosed with osteoporosis, what levels of calcium and vitamin D do you recommend? Okay, so if it is actual osteoporosis, then a calcium supplement is indicated, and otherwise generally recommend calcium supplements to women, but you don't need a ton of calcium. You'll be told you need like 1,000 or 1,500 milligrams. You can't absorb that much. It doesn't seem to be helpful. A little bit extra per day, up to 500 milligrams of calcium per day is plenty, additional calcium. You're just not going to use the rest of it. And vitamin D, it really depends on the individual. Blood levels can vary. 2,000 IUs per day is usually a safe dose for people across the board. And then at some point, it would be good to get a vitamin D blood test to see if your levels are in a therapeutic range. Okay, let me go to the chat.
So it looks like it starts with Laura. Can you please offer some suggestions of whole foods that we can eat in replacement of supplements?
Sure. What's the time on that comment, just so I can make sure I'm...
7:14.
14. Okay, let me get there. Here we go. All right, thanks. Offer some suggestions of foods we can eat in replacement of supplements. So as I mentioned, studies have shown that women who consume more legumes, and fresh legumes in particular, things like green peas, for example, and other types of legumes, non-GMO soybeans, although I prefer those in a fermented form, ideally if you can find them, have improvements in menopausal symptoms, as well as avoiding trigger foods, getting in adequate amounts of healthy fats. That one is a little bit trickier, but avoiding the seed oils like vegetable oils, canola oils, they're high in omega-6 fats, which are pro-inflammatory, throw off your hormone balance. So those are some of the foods you can take and foods you can avoid in menopause.
So where can somebody get sage leaf that you mentioned, Dr. Kate?
So that is a Women's Sense product that is available. And I have heard people have tried to like doing a do-it-yourself of, say, sage tea, for example, or growing sage, but you can try it or eating a lot of sage, but I don't know if you will be absorbing enough of the active ingredient, whereas the sage leaf supplement is designed to be an effective dose.
Perfect. So Chantel asks, I have a legume allergy. A lot of products have soy. Which products do you recommend that are soy-free?
Well, I don't think I have mentioned anything with soy in it tonight. I'm pretty sure all the products I'm recommended are soy-free, certainly the Biosil, the collagen. I would double check the labels, but I'm pretty sure I haven't mentioned anything that contains soy on the label.
Perfect. Are there any side effects to the total body collagen that we need to be aware of?
Nope. I mean, anybody can have an unusual or rare reactions to things, say stomach upset, but for the most part, it is tolerated like a food.
Perfect. Is Adrenal Sense okay for somebody taking Synthroid?
Yep, that's fine. Not a problem.
Perfect. And just to mention, there's a lot of questions about the handout. The handout will come with the recording in the email that follows up, just so you guys are aware. And it is printable. It's a PDF, so you guys can print it and post it wherever you'd like. And then the last comment is Sage Tea has been working for Indigenous nations for generations. So
great.
Good to know. Good to know.
Good.
And what's the name of your book, Dr. Kate?
Vitamin K2 and the Calcium Paradox. It's got the Tower of Cheese on the front.
Perfect. And we've got, I think, time for one last question. How much sage leaf to help with night sweats should somebody take?
Well, in the sage leaf capsules that I showed, the recommended dosage is 2 caps twice a day. Now, if you're not having hot flashes and you're just having night sweats, you can just take it at night, or if it's just during the day, just take it in the morning, vice versa. But I don't know what the equivalent of that would be in, say, loose sage herb, but 2 capsules twice daily is the typical dose.
Perfect. That looks like it's it for the questions. Thank you, Dr. Kate, for a fantastic presentation. Lots of great information. And thank you to all of our attendees who joined us tonight. Stay tuned, check your emails. You'll receive the recording and the handout shortly after the session is finished here. So thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thanks. Good night.
Thank you, Kate.
Thanks,
Dr. Kate. Thank you, Michelle. Have a lovely long weekend. Enjoy, have fun, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, sounds good. Bye. Good night.
Bye-bye. Good night, everyone. Bye, Michelle.